Sure. It's 4 o'clock on April 9th, 2026, and this is the Cape Cod Regional Government Assembly of Delegates Standing Committee on Finance. Pursuant to Chapter 2 of the Acts of 2025, this virtual meeting of the Barnstable County Assembly of Delegates Standing Committee on Finance will be conducted via remote means only in accordance with applicable law. Members of the public can watch the meeting through live real-time broadcast at www.youtube.com/user/Barnstable County. A public participation guide and meeting documents are available in advance at www.capecod.gov. The County of Barnstable does not discriminate in the administration of its programs or activities on the basis of race, color, religion, national origin, disability, age, sex, sexual orientation, gender identity, or other category protected by state and federal anti-discrimination laws and regulations. Reasonable accommodations for people with disabilities are available upon request. For more information or to file a complaint, please contact Christina Marchak, Barnstable County ADA Non-Discrimination Coordinator at JMARCZAK at capecod.gov. Call 508-375-6646 or visit www.capecod.gov. Members of the public may also attend the meeting remotely through Microsoft Teams, and all of that information is available at capecod.gov. Back to you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. For that, I will call this meeting to order and start with the opening ceremonies. Could we have a moment of silence to honor our troops who have died in service to the country and all those who are serving our country in the armed forces? Thank you. Now, those who can will stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, here we go. Now we're going to do our reports. We're going to start.
Would you like a roll call, Mr. Chair?
I would like a roll call. Absolutely. Why did I miss that?
Let's do one of those. Deputy Speaker Frizzell.
Here.
Delegate Gallagher.
Here.
Vice Chair Killian.
Here.
Delegate O'Malley.
Here.
Chair Oman.
Here.
And I know that we've got at least one alternate, Delegate Fuller here, and I do not believe that Delegate King will be joining us. He did reach out. So.
Okay. So we're full complement for everything we need. All right. So number 6 is the first thing is Telecommunications and Energy Committee. We do have the chair here. Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The Assembly of Delegates Standing Committee on Telecommunications and Energy, we met on Wednesday, March 23rd. And we reviewed the 2027 budget for information technology. The Information Technology Director, Bill Traverse, excuse me, and Regional Administrator Michael Dutton appeared before the committee to discuss the budget. The committee voted unanimously to recommend the approval of the budget to the Finance Committee as proposed. The committee found that the budget to be structurally balanced as revenue continues to outpace expense growth despite higher workload. I'll talk a little bit about what we did, but you may recall actually on Monday, Finance Director Copel actually went through a lot of what some of the IT's budget as it relates to security. So Bill Traverse he talked about a $70,000 one-time cost as it relates to security within the system. And that is actually reflected in the contractual services line, which is why that approaches about an 8% increase over last year. His labor or salaries and wages is approaching 4%. And also some of this is relating to work with the accounting system, the ERP system that the county uses, and how we're going to be reducing costs with DocuSign expenses by approximately $30,000 annually. So there was a few one-time charges as they relate to some savings associated with it, but in general, it's not much different than previous budgets. We did discuss briefly, I brought it up, the possibility of actually expanding these services to outside the county, which apparently there's no prohibition from us doing that. I think because I've always believed that the IT department represents a great opportunity for regional services and in providing some revenue back to the county. It's never taken off to any great extent, and perhaps we may have saturated the market that's in Barnstable County, and we should consider looking elsewhere, especially if we can do these remotely that don't require any type of travel. They did talk about, he actually had in his budget at one time, they were going to do a rate study. And I think we've done these in the past with this department to ensure that what we're charging the towns reflects the actual cost of services. However, he withdrew that because we're going to do that countywide indirect rate study, which I'm sure the assembly will approve, but I'm obviously looking forward to it as it relates to the IT department, because I think it's something that's due. I think it was, as the chair, remember, we've gone over some of this in the past, making sure that these departments are running and they know exactly what their costs are, and that can reflect in the services that they're providing to the other towns.
I do remember that as an ongoing conversation, and what part of it was because I think it was very hard for them to calculate the man hours it took to drive to the lower Cape towns, because that's who needs it the most. I mean, Barnstable doesn't need it. They're big, the biggest towns that have their own options, but going out to Truro and Orleans and Wellfleet and such is it has to be costed out that way. And I know that we've had that discussion over the last several budgets. So thanks for it's great that it's almost all remote now too, because you get a lot more done without turning key in your car.
It does, and obviously travel is a part of it, but actually knowing what the overhead is from an hourly standpoint, it was important. And so, as I said, I'm hoping that more of this can be done remotely. And so perhaps we can find maybe some places on the islands that could use the services, but it just seems like there's a lot of potential there. We've tried over the years to expand it. We seem to be stuck in a place we've been for a few years now.
Thank you for that. Are there any questions from the board? I see that Delegate Brazel has his hand up.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I don't have a problem with the numbers in this budget. I just have a point of information, which is I noticed that in the narrative, the director indicates they're going to be seeking out some grant opportunities. And there are no currently, apparently, any grants received by the IT department. Do we know anything about those grant opportunities and what they may be applying for and how it affects their operations?
I don't believe we got any specifics of it, other than it, as I said, he mentioned it. I think in years past, he's looked at similar opportunities, none of which that I'm aware of actually panned out to any great extent. But I'm not sure. This may relate to some degree to the broadband situation on the Cape, where he may be able to get some grant money as relates to that.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Delegate O'Malley.
Thank you, Chair. Jim, I'm just Delegate Killian. Just wondering, what are the towns currently taking advantage of it, and has that number changed over the years? I haven't heard about any new towns signing up recently. Where do we stand with that?
I don't know the actual specific towns. Most of them are the smaller outer Cape towns. And
Yeah,
the answer to your question, it's been pretty flat for the last few years. We did have some work that they did with Bourne a year or two ago that was kind of filling in for them while they were short-staffed.
Right.
But it's been growth. It's been very small growth, but not nearly what we expected when we set about this path many years ago.
No, I agree, and I find that a little bit troublesome. It makes me wonder about, the validity of the service. It feels like it's been flat. That's my sense too. Okay, I got nowhere to go with that. Just I wonder.
Okay. Delegate Brazel, your hand is still up.
I'm sorry, I forgot to put it down.
Okay. I want to recognize Assistant County Administrator Vera Herrick.
Good afternoon, thank you. It's my recollection that the Provincetown is considering coming on board with our IT services. And in terms of the expansion of services to your discussion. Thank you.
Thank you for that.
Thank,
Is there
thank
any,
you.
Oh, and that when Billy was discussing his budget, he did mention that they seem to be at the boundary of their capacity for in-person assistance and management at the various sites. And so, you know, to scale beyond that would either need sort of technological changes in the type of service that they provide and make some of it remote, or they would need to add units in terms of people and able to deploy. So they're at that boundary.
yeah, well, thank you for that, because that's really important to me, is that we don't need to hire any new people for this, to add another person. It would seem to be a net loss to do that unless you got a significant amount of new business out of this. So thank you for that. That you think you're at the edge of what we can do in person with the staff that we currently have. That's what I was hearing, right?
That's what I recall Billy saying. Yes, thank you.
Yeah, makes sense. Now I see Delegate Frizel.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, I was going to move that we recommend to the Assembly.
Well, before you do that,
Okay.
Delegate Killian has his hand up.
All right.
You are muted, Delegate Killian.
I hit the button, it didn't work. Just to discuss, we did talk about that, and that was where we talked about remote, and we believe that, you know, the rate study will help. So if in fact they do have the potential for other towns on board, they'll have a better handle on what sort of overhead they will incur to service them and be able to more appropriately budget.
Well, thank you. That's great. And that's exactly what we want to hear. Yeah. All right. Now, Delegate Frizel.
I move a recommendation to the Assembly to approve the IT budget as presented by the Board of Commissioners.
I'll
Thank
second
you.
that.
I'll second.
And Delegate O'Malley seconded. Any further discussion from the board? Seeing
No,
none?
I would just
Roll call.
I
You
would
got-
just say that hearing that the rate study is going to be looking at that question, and that opens up opportunities. I think I'm very happy to hear that and concur with funding this department.
Thank you. That being said, Mr. Clerk, could I have a roll call, please, on the recommendation to
Certainly,
approve this to the full assembly?
Deputy Speaker Frizel,
Yes.
Delegate Gallagher,
Yes.
Vice Chair Killian,
Yes.
Delegate O'Malley,
Yes.
Chair Omen.
Yes.
It's 5 yeses.
5-0. Great. Thank you. Moving on. Now we're going to the Natural Resources Committee. And the first one of that is a corporate extension. Who's going to take that?
I guess that would be me.
Okay.
The Standing Committee on Natural Resources met remotely on Wednesday, March 25th, 5 p.m. The committee reviewed the fiscal year 2027 Cape Cod Regional Government budget for the Cape Cod Cooperative Extension and AmeriCorps Cape Cod program. The committee voted unanimously to favorably recommend both budgets to the Finance Committee as proposed. Regional Administrator Michael Dutton and Extension Director Mike McGuire appeared before the committee to discuss the budget for the cooperative extension. The proposal includes a contingency fund for a potential department relocation in 2027. AmeriCorps Program Director Niemeyer and Director McGuire presented the fiscal year 2027 budget for AmeriCorps Cape Cod. Members agreed the budget is necessary to sustain the program's community service and emergency response efforts. And that's about it.
Thank you. Questions from the board? I see Delegate Frizel, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I have 2 or 3 things that I wanted to ask about in this budget. First of which is, it's indicated on the page where we list all the grant-funded position, that 2.96 positions, FTEs, are grant-funded here in the extension. When I go to the budget, unlike some other departments, which I think was a directive from the administrator to list what's been fully funded by grants, partially, and so forth, nothing's listed. So I don't know which positions out of the positions we look at page 87 are actually grant-funded positions in whole or in part. And I don't know whether we have anyone with us today who can.
Well, we have the administrator with us, actually.
Yeah, I don't know if that information is available today, but I'm curious to know who it is and what kind of funding we're getting for those positions.
I know that Chair McGuire has done a fabulous job of getting grants, and he handles them very well. In my past budget opinions, but I really don't know how to answer the 2027 budget right now. But may I ask Mr. Dutton, please?
Thank you, Chair, for that. And that is one piece of information that I'll have to get for the committee. I do know that unlike some other departments, the cooperative extension does secure numerous grants that aren't always very large grants, so that those are spread a little bit more among the staff. They may fund pieces of the staff's work over time or over the year, but I don't know the exact. I'd have to get the exact breakdown there.
Mr. Chair, I just would ask, because this was a request, I think, in preparing the budget book from the administrator, and many departments did go along with that and provided that kind of information in their actual department reports, and this department did not. It would be nice if all departments complied with what the administrator's asking them to do with respect to showing us that information in the department reports. The second thing is, I noticed here the salary is increasing, the line for salaries. And this is something, it's a theme of mine. Well, I'm going to talk about this in other budgets too. It's not just here. But the salary is going up by $220,742, a 13.8% increase. Now, we've been through this the last meeting. I'll just repeat it quickly again. We know this is where growth is happening, and it's creating the potential for a budget that will be structurally in deficit with high payroll costs. And yet we see 13.8. I mean, I don't understand why 1 year that we're jumping that much in the salary line alone.
Administrator Dutton, would you care to address that? I noticed it myself too, Delegate Frizo.
Yes, it does. Going back to the grant-funded positions, I don't know why they didn't appear in the narrative, but we do have a fisheries aquaculture specialist, coastal process hazmat hazardous specialist, another fisheries specialist, and a coastal resilience specialist. All are 50% funded through grant. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4 positions funded directly through grant. So there is that. I will point out that the revenue side, so this budget includes a position that will project manage the compost facility, which is funded. The actual contract work is funded through the administration budget, which we can get to, and then this budget also accommodates the Barnstable County staff that will get the compost facility up and running. So that is a project manager position that will be responsible for getting that up and running. That is eventually will be offset by the revenue that's generated by the compost facility, but it won't be this year. It won't be this year.
If I might, that means we've added a new position in this department.
We've actually reconfigured a position in the department. So Mike McGuire has figured out how he can reconfigure that. It is an additional burden because we're not paying that project manager directly through DEP funding that we get for this department. Well, let me back up. So for one of the positions we have, it's primarily DEP funded, and the county funds a portion of it. We are now converting that position into the project manager for the compost facility, and the DEP component of that is going to rest with different staff that are currently on board. So there's no bottom line increase in the number of employees. There's a shifting of responsibilities. And a shifting of how that position will be paid.
I understand, but it must come with some additional salary because we're seeing an additional $220,000 on the salary line.
I can assure you that we're not paying the project manager $200,000.
No, I know that. I know, of course, it's not just him, or not just that person, but I mean, that person's already on board, so their responsibilities
Right.
are shifting. I don't know that meant that there was a compensation increase for some reason for that person, adding that to all the others. I mean, this is another burden. I'm just trying to get at, is this a built-in new burden not offset by revenue that we're taking on in this department?
Right. I will have to dig into the particulars on that one.
Okay.
And the other, Delegate Friesel, I don't want to
Sure.
step on your toes, but
No,
you always ask this question too about the fringes. So if we got 4 half-time employees that are on a grant, is who's paying those fringes, and how does that work out when only half of it is grant funded? It's always the question you ask, and I'm not stepping on your toes. Hopefully, just to ask the same question.
Fine to ask. Thank you.
Yeah, I can. So I'll make note of those questions and get more information from you. I can tell you that generally, fringes are covered proportionally by the grant. So if we have a grant for halftime position, then half of the fringes would be covered by that, and that's generally. The specifics of this particular budget, I'll have to get back to you with.
I got to tell you that Mr. McGuire, the head of the department, he's always done the right thing all the way through. He always has a very thoughtful process in past budgets, and I'm sure that that's the case right now. But it'll be great to get the facts on that again too. But he's a proven quality manager, and I always appreciate what he does. And what he is willing to do without when the budget requires him to do with less. So I'm confident that will come out the right way for those of you who have not been on the committee as long as I. Delegate Killian.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. Administrator Dutton, you did touch upon the fact that we will be generating revenue from this new process, but it won't be, you don't think it'll be in fiscal 27? And if not, approximately when? And what sort of revenue are we anticipating?
Obviously, we want to recoup whatever costs we've invested in this, and I think for those that have been around a while, they know that we have two independent feasibility studies that were done, and both of those studies cost money. They were grant funded studies, so that obviously the county didn't have to pay directly for those, but we want to make sure that we're recouping our development costs. Right now, we're looking at a break ground of 12. Well, now it's probably 8 to 12, 8 to 15 months, somewhere in that time frame. And at that point, my assumption is, we don't know this yet, but my assumption is that the county will contract out the running of that operation and reap some benefit out of that contract. So I can't tell you exactly how much at this point, because that's a contract that has yet to go out to bid and has yet to we have yet to see. So
So under the most optimistic set of plan, it's going to be a couple of years before we see any type of return. That's reasonable.
I'd say that's a safe bet. Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Delegate Frizzell, please. You're muted.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I noticed in the budget narrative at page 84 that there is a bullet point at the top of the page where the director recommends moving a hazardous waste staff person from the hazardous waste program to the health department for efficiencies. Is that something you think is going to happen during the course of fiscal 27 or not? I'd like to know what your thinking is.
I think it is safe to say that there will be some revisions that we are going to propose over the course of fiscal year 2027. I don't think it's going to have a budget impact at all, but in terms of repositioning functions among the various departments, I think it's safe to say in this particular case, I think it's safe to say there will be some revision. Though Mike did formulate his budget in a way that created sort of a different division within his department, specifically to make it easier to transfer that budget-wise in the future. So short answer is yes, I do envision some changes.
And also in the narrative, Chair McGuire wanted to let us know that he's working on getting a new location for his entire staff. Is there any update on that you can tell us about?
So he is. So our hope. Let me just say, our hope is to remain in the space that he's currently that the county's currently leasing. We don't know that. We don't have a negotiated executed lease for the next 3 or 5 years. So he did budget, I believe it was $15,000 in his budget for a possible move. Again, we are hoping, and I am expecting that he will remain in that location, but we won't know that until the lease is actually signed. So I don't think he's going to have to move, but he's doing the right thing by preparing and looking at other options. But my hope is we won't have to move.
Thank you. Are there any other questions being brought up by the Finance Committee, including our alternate, Mr. Fuller, Delegate Fuller? Seeing none, what is the pleasure of the board? We've asked for some information that's not available to us. What is the pleasure of the board? Do you want to vote on this knowing that it's pretty much done, or do you want to hold off until we get that other information? Time draws nigh on a lot of this. Nobody? Delegate Frizzell.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, I think that we've got a pretty much the answer, right? I mean, the administrator has told us about the grant funded positions and the basic fringe allocation answer. And you know, I'm going to point out when I see these larger increases in salaries, I don't know what we as a committee can do about that other than cutting the budget if we think I can't evaluate that. I don't see what each person's being paid and whether or not it's appropriate. What I'm pointing out though is when we see large increases, and this is going to come up again right in the next budget, which is AmeriCorps, where that salary increase is 17%, right? When you're way over what so many departments are in terms of salary wage increases, it raises the issue, what's going on in that department that shows such a significant increase in the salary line when we know that personnel costs is the driver behind the potential future structural deficit of the county budget. We're just trying to build a case for what's going on here. It just, I'm not sure I have a good answer to that as to why some of these are so high in terms of their increase over time.
Yeah, you're right. When looking at there's a 17% increase in AmeriCorps too.
I mean,
Um,
am I the only guy who cares? I mean, is
No,
this
I-
something
I-
that,
I
you
think-
know, it doesn't bother people? I mean, come on.
Delegate Killian.
I certainly appreciate Delegate Freisel's concern, and he's right. Perhaps if the concern is great, then we should be doing something about it rather than just rubber stamping it and moving along. If we decide, and he's right, I mean, we have to watch these increases because they're just going to multiply year in and year out. That we say, no, we're going to limit you to 10%. That's all you get. That's the max. And they'll have to find a way to work within that budget if we want to take that position. But obviously, we have to do that with with a great deal of thought to make sure that if we do such, we're not going to negatively affect how that department functions.
Yeah, I know that AmeriCorps has had issues with having to raise compensation for the people to get them to come here. I know that that's one of the factors I've noticed, and we give them free housing too. So, yeah, good. These are great points, and I think you both of the delegates have spoken to that, and will continue to speak to that. And again, that's the entire county's obligation, is to stay to the point where we are able to continue on. And I think we're at 80%. I notice all these salaries are. If you look at the salaries of the extension service, salaries and fringes are 81% of their budget right now, and it's not getting smaller. Delegate O'Malley.
Thank you. I agree with the concerns here. Clearly, we're driving towards an unsustainable situation, and I think it's less a question of any given department, because we're seeing this across the boards. And I think a part of the obvious driver is we're giving COLAs of 3% a year, and we're giving step increases, so that what's happening here is this line is going up by 6% or more per year. That's beyond the range of inflation, and we need to think about whether that's sustainable. That's an overall issue. That's not a question for any single department.
Just technically, I'm pretty sure of this, but Mr. Administrator Dutton will correct me. I think the COLA for the county is 2% this year, and I think that has been an issue with Commissioner Bergstrom, actually. But yeah, I will stand corrected if that's not true, Mr. Administrator Dutton.
No, Chair, that is correct. The COLA this year is 2%. Over the past number of years, it's been 3%.
And that was a budgetary decision that was maybe not very well received by the staff. But I think the Administrator Dutton has said that we're on a course that we have to really be careful of everything we do. And Director Coppola has put the numbers to that to make that absolutely the case going forward, unless we figure out a way to raise revenue to match the increased salary and fringe benefit package it is that we offer. That being said, what's next here? I see Delegate Freisel, please. You're on mute.
I'm sorry. A couple of points. Number one, the rate of these increase in salaries in several departments, they're not all at this level. A lot of them are much closer to the 6%. All right, they're not all at 13 and 17. And wait till we get to the Cove, based upon the latest numbers I just got today from the director. And that's far greater than our growth in excise tax and total revenues within the county government. You can't keep that up. This is not my first rodeo. I served on a finance committee for many years and was a select board member in Winchester. And the budget there, back in the time I served, was more than 3 times this budget. Okay. And here's what happens. This keeps going on, and we can just say, go ahead, keep paying this. And here's where the rubber hits the road. You hit this, as we did in Winchester, you hit the level of structural deficit, which the Finance Committee I served on pointed out to town meeting. We had all the statistics to show them this is where we're headed, folks. And they still passed all the same budgets. And guess what? That's where we ended up. Tried to get a revenue increase. You don't get it. You fire people. That's what happens. I mean, that's we don't have any other choice. So if we're not going to take steps before we get to that point, then we're all going to deal with this next fiscal year or the one after, and it's going to cause departures because there's no money to pay all of this staff this amount of compensation. So that's what happens when you don't try to get ahead of this potential structural deficit.
Thank you. If there's no one else from the Finance Committee, I see that Delegate Gessen has his hand raised, and I always enjoy hearing his thought process regarding budget items. Delegate Gessen, please.
Thank you, Chair. I was listening on YouTube and the conversation piqued my interest here, so I hopped on. Hope that's okay. I was hoping to ask Administrator Dutton, just given obviously the discussion that's being had here, what is the overall year-over-year salary increase that we're looking at in terms of an overall number as well as a percentage? And then is there an overall trend that you could attribute this increase to?
Great questions through the chair. I have calculated the overall budget increase year to year is a little over 7%. If you back out the one-time expenditures, and since the county does its budgeting a little differently than Massachusetts cities and towns. So for those that are have sort of our city and town centric, instead of doing pulling money out of free cash or pulling money out of stabilization to fund sort of projects, we lump it into a budget and we vote one budget. Although last year we tried to sort of parse them out, and I think that caused more confusion. That was my big adventure. But this year, we're back to the way the county has done it in the past. So if you take out sort of the one-time expenditures and the one-time projects, you're 3 I don't have the figure with me, but it was 3.3 and change in the 3.5 range, I believe it was.
Two follow-ups to that, if that's okay, Mr. Chair.
Yep. Then we'll cap it at that.
Okay. Administrator Dutton, but we also had one-time expenses the year before and the year before that, and we're going to have one-time expenses going forward. So I understand what you're saying in terms of we're removing one-time expenses, but then when we remove one-time expenses for this year and compare it to last year with one-time expenses included, that doesn't tell the full story there, right? Because it is a 7% increase, and I'm sure if you removed one-time expenses from last year's budget, that would also be a 7% increase and so forth. And secondly, to clarify, that 3.5 or that 10% increase, is that for the budget overall, or is that specifically for the salary line item?
That's the budget overall. That's everything that's not one-time expenses. I don't have the figure offhand for just the staff expense, but certainly I can get that.
Oh. Okay. Further discussion? Seeing none, I would like to know what the thought process is of the board on going forward with this recommendation or not. I'd see Delegate Frizel.
Well, I mean, this discussion is not going to lead us to the information. It would get us too much into compensation levels of people. I will point out that to the extent to which certain department increases in salaries are above this overall 7%, what you're doing is you're crowding out somebody else, right? I mean, in order to stay within 7 for the whole budget item, then if people are going above that, somebody's going below that. So that's how we get to the average 7%, right? So And I said this the last meeting. I mean, if that's intentional, fine. If it's by default, it's something you have to look at because it's going to force a priority decision somewhere down the road because there's only so much pie, and it's a question of who's getting what share of that pie. And the pie is not expanding, pie being revenue. It's not expanding at the same rate. We can't count on it expanding at the same rate as the expense side. So it's going to come down at some point. This doesn't appear to be the year. So I don't see at this point anything other than let's vote this budget and move on.
And with that, would you have a recommendation
I'll
for
move,
us?
I'll move, I'll move approval as submitted for the budget for the, that was the extension.
Thank you. Thank you. Do I have a second on that?
I'll second.
Okay, there's a second. Further discussion from the board only. Seeing none, a roll call, please, Mr. Clerk.
Deputy Speaker Frizell,
Yes.
Delegate Gallagher,
Yes.
Vice Chair Killian,
Yes.
Delegate O'Malley,
Yes.
Chair Oman.
Yes,
5 yeses, Mr. Chair.
thank you. We'll move on to page 92 is the meat of the matter. AmeriCorps. Same situation, the same questions. I know. In full disclosure, I'm on their advisory board, and I don't like what they're doing. But this is again troubling that our wages are going up a little over 17% for that. And I'm pretty sure, I mean, back in the heyday, we had 26 and even 32 members of AmeriCorps that we did. Now, I think we're at 20 if we're lucky. Is that an accurate statement? Is it still 20? Because there is departures, early departures. There's all kinds of stuff that goes on with these young people. So are we at 20, Administrator Dutton?
Yes, we are. Yes, we
Yeah.
are.
Okay. I mean, it's the same questions. How do we sustain a 17% increase in AmeriCorps?
So what, if I could, what drives this particular increase is our changes to the federal rules that require us to pay an increased stipend to the members. That is that's by far what drives this increase.
It's essentially an unfunded mandate from the feds, right? So if we want the program,
If I
Exactly.
may, that increase that we have to pay the AmeriCorps members is fully $30,000 of the increase year over year. The rest of it is just the step and COLA for the full-time staff.
yeah. And how many full-time staff do we have with AmeriCorps now?
We
Um,
have, oh, go ahead, Vera.
There were three plus three. There's two, no, 3 plus 2. I'd have to look up. There's the manager and 2 coordinators that are paid through the general fund. And then there are 2 or 3 house managers, depending on how many houses are underway, are being used. That
They're
are paid
house
through
specific,
the grant.
They're house-specific
Yeah.
coordinators. Yes, I
So
know
there's
that.
5 staff overall, if memory serves me. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Delegate Frizell, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I'll just point out that according to page 21 of the budget book, you have 6 FTEs, 3 FTEs are grant funded, and you've just told us who those people are. That isn't listed, however, on page 93. Again, just a request for consistency in the budget book next year that people show us where there's positions. I mean, some did. That's what the asterisk system was all about. And so it'd be helpful if everybody complied with that. I think I heard, and it was one of my questions, where the stipends get paid. And I think I heard that stipends get paid out of the salary and wages line in the budget, and that number was 30,000. So that would mean only 14, the total line item budget increase is 44,445. So that would mean only 14,445 is actually being paid as a budget increase, salary increase to the staff itself. That's our permanent staff. And so it's,
Yeah.
to me, a lot less alarming if that's the story.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Further discussion within the board, the finance committee itself. Seeing none, I'll entertain a motion if there is one.
Just one question, if I can, Mr.
Oh, I
Mr.
see now. Sorry, Delegate
It-
Killian.
Do we anticipate that this will be a one-time increase, or can we expect similar increases for the next few years? Does anyone know that?
I think certainly, as the last year has shown, I'm not quite sure what will happen next year, mid-year, but I expect that this is a one-time shift, and after this, we won't see a dramatic shift. But again, that's maybe my hope and prayer, but that's my expectation.
Thank you for that.
I know we can't put this in any budget, but if you look at what the value added to the community, all 15 towns, it's unbelievable how much value we get from these 20 young people they're working for 30 grand a year. You know, I mean, sometimes you wonder if it's even minimum wage because they do so much. And I'm biased here because I've been on the board for more than a decade. So I watch how they work, I watch how hard they work, and I watch how much they give back to the community. And not all of it is on the books. They're just very dedicated people. And the other side you can't put a number on is they get sand in their shoes, and you get people like Mike McGuire, who we've been mentioning as the chair of the Extension Service. He's AmeriCorps year one, you know. And it goes on and on from there. They get sand in their shoes, and we have a young, aggressive, very, very well-educated youth movement through AmeriCorps that is I can't put a price to it, but it's invaluable. Sorry. Delegate O'Malley.
Just to clarify on Mr. Dutton's remark, so I would assume that although this one-time demand for ruling for increased stipends has driven a large increase in percentage-wise, we still will be facing that extra $30,000 a year in recompensation going forward.
Right. It won't come. I would expect it's not going to compound though. So if we're going to absorb that 30,000 this year, next year it will be something substantially. If there's an increase, it would be something substantially less than 30,000.
It will be something less than. Well, okay, I'm not following why the 30,000 will be less. I would assume the 17% will be less, but.
So
In other words, no additional compensation for next year would be planned or expected after this one-time demand from the feds, is what I understand.
Is that right? So are we paying back wages? Is that the case? No.
You're increasing the minimum of payment to these 20 young people.
Right.
So then why don't we expect that in coming years?
We do. We just don't expect it to increase unless
Yes.
we're directed otherwise.
Got it. Understood. Okay. I'm good with that.
Thank you. Further discussion from the board. Seeing none, I'll entertain a motion, if so. Delegate Frizzell. You're muted.
No, I keep switching the button the wrong way. Sorry. I move approval of the budget as submitted for AmeriCorps, recommended
Thank you.
to the Assembly.
Thank you for that. And I need a second.
I'll second.
I'll second.
I think Delegate Killian seconded for the record. And is there further discussion on AmeriCorps? Seeing none, roll call, please, Mr. Clerk.
Yes, Mr. Chair. Deputy Speaker Frizzell,
Yes.
Delegate Gallagher,
Yes.
Vice Chair Killian,
Yes.
Delegate O'Malley,
Yes.
Chair Omen.
Yes.
That's 5, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Moving on to our big budget items here. Well, not right away. Health and Human Services. Let's start with I think we have our chair right here. So we'll go with Human Rights Advisory Commission to start with.
Right. Well, okay. So, Health and Human Services met remotely on March 23rd. And with respect to the Human Rights Advisory Commission, the staff remains level funded at 2 part-time FTEs. There have been increasing demands related to the fact that reports of civil rights violations, human rights violations have increased. It's unclear whether that represents an increasing number of incidents across the region, or whether that is simply the function of a vigorous outreach that the HRAC conducts everywhere they can to let their presence be known. At any rate, they're managing. There's demands come and go depending on these reports. We have essentially all of our positions filled. There are some vacancies pending, term outs, but we're in good place for that. The commission is actually considering the use of AmeriCorps volunteers to help staff some of the larger events, the Human Rights Day and the Human Rights Academy twice a year. I don't know a whole lot about that situation, but that seems to be an ongoing discussion. They're in adequate shape in terms of materials, and that was approved by a 5-0 vote. That budget.
Thank you for that. It's a relatively small budget, I know, but nonetheless, yeah. Is there any questions from the board? Seeing none, I will entertain a motion. Delegate Frizel, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I will move approval of the Human Rights Commission budget
And I'll
as
second
recommended
that.
by the board to the Assembly.
I'll
Do we have a
second.
second. Yeah.
Yeah.
Delegate O'Malley seconded. Further discussion? Seeing none, I'll ask for a roll call vote, please, Mr. Clerk.
All right, Mr. Chair. Deputy Speaker Frizel,
Yes.
Delegate Gallagher,
Yes.
Vice Chair Killian,
Yes.
Delegate O'Malley,
Yes.
Chair Omen.
Yes,
5, Mr. Chair.
thank you. We can move on to Human Services, page 108.
A report, Chair?
Yes, please.
Thank you. So again, at that same meeting on March 23, we heard from Human Services Director Joe Pacheco, who reported, who is showing this budget is an increase of 0.1% this year with level services. There are challenges. The older adult program will run out of funding and this year, and we're going to have to absorb they will have to absorb some of what that has been done. That represents a real challenge. The There, I would say that there's no big change in this budget. It's a small budget. They do an awful lot of projects in terms of housing. The regional housing program is going along that we approved. So 14 of the 15 towns are taking advantage of that program. And I would say that department does an exceptional job of handling juggling a lot of projects.
Thank you for that. I noticed that of that budget, and this is typical of it from many aspects. I think it's 81.6% of their budget is personnel and fringes. That's, that's a common factor going forward. And I know that Delegate Frizel has championed that thought process. So, and there he is. Delegate Frizel, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. A couple of observations and questions here. First of all, if you look at page 113, you'll see that there was compliance with the administrator's directive to show what's fully grant funded, partially in other funding. So you had that shown here, which is very helpful and that's this is what we want to see in those departments that do have grant funding. It helps us. Number two, so notice the increase in salary and wages. It's 3.24. So this is my point. Somebody's coming in at 13 or 17. The only way we can keep this at 7% overall is other people are coming in at 3.24, and much lower than the number. Number three, I noticed that there is the same number of FTEs in 27 as 26, 10.6, yet under the chart on page 21, you're decreasing your FTEs that are grant funded by almost 2.5 FTEs. Yet your budget's only going up by 3.24 in salary and wages. So how are you doing that? I mean, to me, at least on the face of it, it's kind of counterintuitive that your salary increase is so low because we're pushing more of the same FTE time onto the general fund, it would seem. What am I missing?
So, Chair, if I could,
Please.
there are a couple of things here. One is that there's retirements that happen, and once somebody retires who's at the top of their grade, at the top step within their grade, we hire at a step one to replace that one. That's a huge part of that. Just going back to the aging adults, we do, and I think as Joe Pacheco, Director of Human Services, had explained during the committee meeting, we are cautiously optimistic that we'll be able to secure additional grant funding. He has built his budget without the assumption of that grant funding right now, which is the right thing to do. I think that's a conservative thing to do. So, but there is, we do have turnover, and when we have turnover, that really drives lower, more reasonable salary and fringe usually go hand in hand. So, and then conversely, where you've got a steady staff that in a department that does not have a lot of turnover, you'll see the full freight of those salary increases.
Thank you. Delegate O'Malley, please.
Thank you, Mr. Dutton. If I could ask this question, I can't. My own notes from that meeting don't clearly reflect it, but clearly this shared regional housing services program has become a revenue generator. The towns are paying us. I don't know. I'm not clear about how much that may be a factor in the budget, the small budget increase.
No, that's a great question. In this particular budget, there is no accounting for the shared regional housing program. We pulled that out in the first year. I'm considering this the first year, even though we did a 2-year pilot, because we did the 2-year pilot with ARPA funds, which essentially were off budget. Now that we're doing the first year of our actual town participation, financial participation, we pulled that one out and we put that under administration, mostly to keep an eye on it to make sure that it was getting the attention that it really needed. So that is it's not a huge. We're not going to make money on it, but we're certainly not going to lose money on it. It's designed to provide a service to the towns that can be a wash, essentially. Obviously, we get to charge a little bit for our overhead,
Yes.
and that's appropriate. But we're not gonna. It's not going to be a huge revenue generator
stream
for us.
Got it.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
But it does cover, and we do get a de minimis out of it.
Exactly. And I think just as importantly, it's very much appreciated by the towns. They get expert housing assistance and guidance at a very reasonable cost.
Good. Thank you.
Thank you. I always want to put a shout out to the Shine program, because when we talk about regionalization and what we do as a county to regionalize things, the Shine program has their spider webs. Or I think that every town, there may be one that doesn't have a big moment in there, but the Shine program is just what the county should be doing: regionalization of essential services. And the Shine program covers that in spades, and with a tremendous amount of volunteers that just want to help, and they're well trained. And I think that's one of the reasons we are county government and we are important, because you people like that do this for the Shine program. I think it's just a great part of county government. It's just an atta boy kid thing, that sort of thing. So that being said, is there further discussion from the board? Seeing none, I will entertain
I
a
would,
motion.
I would move that the board recommend approval of this budget to the assembly.
I'll second.
Delegate O'Malley motioned it. Delegate Killian seconded. Is there further discussion from the board? Seeing none, I'd like to have a roll call, Mr. Clerk.
All right, Deputy Speaker Frizell,
Yes.
Delegate Gallagher,
Yes.
Vice Chair Killian,
Yes.
Delegate O'Malley,
Yes,
Dean Omen.
Yes,
It's 5, Mr. Chair.
thank you. Moving on. And this is still you, Delegate O'Malley, right? Health and Environment.
that's
it?
correct.
Number.
So again, at that meeting on March 23, we had Department Director Gardner and Lab Director Dan White meeting with us. This was a long and thoughtful discussion, because in our last budget there were positions and equipment added that we questioned the long-term the return. And frankly, we're very pleased with the reports that are coming back on that. The lab equipment, for instance, the lab projected an increased budget, an increased income of 1.1 million. And already at this half point in the year, they're at 968,000. So we're approaching the projected range already. The same was true I'll save that for later. The PFAS testing has exceeded. We required some pretty expensive equipment and a dedicated person to handle that, and the volume has clearly exceeded. Was at the upper end of what estimations were. And we're anticipating that as the spring goes on, the volume of that testing goes up. They anticipate that again in that arena, we should see revenue that exceeds what was even projected. So we were pretty satisfied with that. It is to be noted that although our freshwater, our marine water testing is reimbursed by the state, the work that they do for beaches that are on freshwater bodies is not, and that is currently not reimbursed and not charged to the towns. That's a subject that was discussed and needs to be considered again in the rate study. We'll see as we go along. I'm going to separate out. Well, I don't know. I can probably. It's under the same the Mass Tech site. I might as well, because it's under that department. So I'll stay with it. Under Mass Tech, we had Director Brian Baumgartel on the call. He projected that again in this area at the half year point, our revenues are already at 75% of projections, and he did note that over the last 8 out of the last 10 years, revenue has exceeded expenses at that site. So that's working. They are pursuing and the development of the at the test site under the grant for from the Gates Foundation, the what he refers to as the toilet of the future, to be basically used in the undeveloped world. Although the grant will only continue for, I believe it's 3 or 4 years. It's expected that that will generate a demand for services and testing that will continue well beyond that. So that seems to be going well. Yeah, I'm going to leave it with that. Budget expansions due to the snowstorm. Nope. And as a matter of fact, what was interesting, the question came up about management of the snowstorm. Clearly, under this department is the emergency services. The county-wide pulling together of personnel from all various departments and services. And despite that, there were no increased budget expenses expected or requested as a result of that exceptional work. So that was approved by a vote of 4-0.
Thank you. Discussion with the board. Delegate Prizell.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. First, as an aside, the toilet of the future can't come soon enough, given the problems Artemis II encountered in its flight with the toilet. So they could use something new and more innovative, apparently, in the space program. But I'm not sure we're trying to aim for that here. But I want to, in a more serious vein, I think backing up this, because I saw, increases of, fairly substantial increases in such things as contractual services of 6.2, overall budget 8.5, but there are significant increases in the revenue side. There's projections from this year, 1,150,000 to 1,004,000, so a $250,000 increase, which I would think most of that should be coming from the lab projected revenue source, which will cover the increases in these other areas like contractual supplies and contractual service supplies and equipment. So that I was taking some comfort from in terms of this budget and its increases. But I want to focus also on page 102, where there's a discussion of a couple of potential future compensation issues, which is there's going to be the department's going to realign and the laboratory staffing pattern, and a business manager position is going to be reconfigured as a lab operations coordinator. Now, I don't know whether that change, plus another one they're planning on making, which would be to change the communications coordinator into a senior I have trouble with that word. Epidemiologist. Okay. And if those positions that they're going to realign now fall into a higher grade and step, then we're building in here some future increases in the salary line and fringes potentially, but hopefully that will be, again, offset by some additional revenues to offset some of that increase. I don't know whether any of that has been discussed or whether what I'm saying is appropriate or accurate.
I would just
Go ahead, Delegate O'Malley, go ahead.
I would just comment on that in both of those, and it's not reflected well in my own notes, but we questioned whether what was the operational impact of removing the business manager and the communications director, and we were satisfied that those functions could be absorbed. I do not have any response on what is the point of your question, which is, are these higher grade levels, and what is that going to impact on the salary? And I would have to defer to Mr. Dutton on that one.
Thank you. I would like to let the committee know that Brian Baumgartel is online with us. If you have a specific scientific question, he's the guy to ask. And not that the administration can't do the same, but he has a certain amount of expertise that none of us have. Speaking for myself, I don't have. So I know that he would be happy to answer questions, or he wouldn't be online. So questions now from the committee.
Well, I thought the administrator was going to answer that
Oh,
question.
I'm sorry. Administrator Dutton, please.
And at a 30,000-foot level, no, we're not looking to reconfigure so that we're offering higher positions or higher grade positions that are in a higher grade. But I'll defer to Vera Herrick if she has more information than I do on this particular one.
Through the chair, thank you. Relative to the administrative salaries, they are so the staffing movements within both the lab and administration are budget neutral. From the point of view of sort of conserving full-time equivalents by not funding a particular function and redeploying those salary resources to other functions. In the case of the lab, it's my recollection that the business manager position was became less of a necessity with the hiring of the deputy director of the lab. So in the current year in which we stands budget, a deputy director was added to the lab, and that gentleman is doing an excellent job, and that is the sort of level at which you would want someone thinking about business level decisions. So that rendered that half-time FTE for business manager superfluous. And so the lab decided to place those hands elsewhere. And on the subject of the administration, the administration part of the health department's budget, there is finally movement, and it's a long cherished thought by all of us in the public health system to institutionalize an epidemiologist within the health department, reporting directly to either the health director himself or his designee. And so that is also funded in a budget neutral manner. There was an opportunity of a communications planner went to a different part of the health department, and that freed up her salary in the administrative budget. And so those resources were redeployed to fund a half-time epidemiologist as a way toward hopefully fully funding in future budgets of this essential public health function. So,
thank you, and also for pointing out the correct pronunciation of the word epidemiologist.
Yes.
Further questions from the board? I see Delegate O'Malley.
And just to follow through on that, I would want to say, as a, from my own professional experience in this area, I think that bringing this epidemiologist aboard is a real smart move. The county did an extraordinary job during the COVID pandemic, and it's one of these nearly inevitables that we will face that kind of thing again. And I think having an epidemiologist to serve regionally is a very smart maneuver on our part, and will save us in the long run.
Mm-hmm. Thank you for that.
Chairman, Dr. O'Malley, we appreciate that commentary from a health professional such as yourself. During COVID, I was in fact our sort of self-deployed acting epidemiologist during COVID, because I had public health training in that area. But by no means am I an epidemiologist per se, and it is an essential public health function.
It is
for the region. Thank you.
Yeah.
It sounds to me like we're moving in a great direction with the lab work and the PFAS machinery that is just going to. I don't even know what the top revenue line is on that, because we're almost unique in New England to have that ability to test
that's
PFAS.
true.
And to me, that's smart government. That's just smart regional government. So I'll just leave it at that. Any further questions from the board? Seeing none, Oh, no, I see one. I see, I see Delegate Frizzell, please.
I was just going to move approval and
Oh, good.
move that we recommend approval of the budget to the full assembly.
Thank
As
you
was
very
I,
much
I'll
for that.
second.
And Delegate O'Malley is seconded. Further discussion? Seeing none. Roll call, please.
Yes, Mr. Chair. Deputy Speaker Frizzell,
Yes.
Delegate Gallagher,
Yes.
Vice Chair Killian,
Yes.
Delegate O'Malley,
Yes.
Chair Omen.
Yes,
That's 5.
thank you. On we go. Now to the fun part here. We're going to go first. The Commissioner's Office and Administration. We have the top people there here, so let's have at it.
Yeah. Mr. Chair,
Yes.
I have what some might consider good news. I have to depart for another meeting in about 14 minutes.
Okay.
So I just let you know that I'll be departing and
Can I with that discretion of having one of our 5 members, we still have, I think, Mr. Fuller's here to take your
that's
place.
correct.
But
Right.
is there one? I know that you had asked specifically about miscellaneous infringing debt in the last meeting. Is there something you'd rather tackle out of these 4 items that remain before you have to leave?
Well,
I'll defer to you on that.
yeah, I do appreciate that we received information from the finance director along the lines we had sought from the Cove and from the other miscellaneous categories, which was very helpful. I would say that of all of them, the one I probably have the most interest in talking about a bit is um, the the miscellaneous budget on the reserve amount that's in there for contingencies, and also the debt discussion. And I'd like to hold the Cove actually, because I think that's a broader discussion. Maybe we could take that up on, if you don't take it tonight, take it up on
Monday.
our meeting Monday.
That might be. I might agree with you on that, but I'll defer to the rest of the board on that. But I agree. It's a big question, and it needs discussion. It's not the great work that they do. It's how much it costs the county to do
Yeah,
it.
and there's a lot of financial information that was just given to us.
Yeah,
I'm
yeah.
not complaining. We said by tomorrow, and they got it sooner, but it's just just landed.
Yeah. So let's go to shared costs.
Okay.
And then we'll flip back to the commissioners, then the pesky assembly of delegates, and then we'll hold off the Cove until Monday.
Okay.
So who's going to do the shared costs? I thought I saw our finance director here earlier. I don't know if she's still here or not. But I'll take any. Yes, there she is. Please, Madam Director.
Thank you, Chair Omen. This afternoon, I provided some information. I don't know if that information was forwarded to all of the members of the Finance Committee. If it was not, we certainly can do that. Or perhaps Owen can forward that for us. But we gathered some information with regard to details on miscellaneous and contingency, the proposed budget for fringe, for retirees, workers' compensation information, and information pertaining to existing and outstanding debt. I actually provided all of our individual debt schedules for the general fund and for dredge. And I know that the committee had additional questions of whether the debt from 2017 is callable. Now, the debt is callable. However, what we don't know is that any costs that would be associated with that, legal costs or thereafter. And so we'll have to get back to the committee with regard to that information. But I'm happy to answer any questions that you have.
With that, from the board.
Mr. Chair,
Delegate Brazel.
Yep. So on the debt, all right, I don't see the interest rates. So I guess the question I have is, if we're going to repay the debt, are we paying more in interest than we're making on the money we have in the reserve that would be used to pay that? I mean, so what makes more economic sense at this point, I guess, is a question. Is it a favorable arbitrage or an unfavorable or neutral? I guess what I'm getting at.
So the 2017 borrowing was borrowed at 5%.
Mm-hmm.
And that is included in the spreadsheet that I had provided
Mm-hmm.
under the tab that's labeled all debt.
Yeah.
And the interest rate is in column C,
Okay. So it's 5%.
5%.
I mean, because this is not a lot of money out of our reserve. I mean, the total amount is 761,370. I mean, how much would it cost us to just take it out of reserve and not keep racking up interest rate, I guess is what I'm getting at. Or does it make more sense to stay and pay off the debt? When does all this debt come due?
Well, so if you're considering the total amount that is budgeted in debt service, which includes principal and interest,
Yep.
it also includes the settlement with the town of Barnstable.
Yep.
And so we are not paying that debt. We are reimbursing the town of Barnstable. So, I'm not sure what the committee's view on is, whether you would like to, whether there's the opportunity to open up those, that settlement agreement and prepay that. But that's a portion of what's budgeted in this category. What's budgeted in this category with regard to the 2017 borrowing for the general fund, because there was a dredge that was purchased and borrowed at that same time. There's a total of $265,000 that's outstanding in principal with regard to the 2017 borrowing for the general fund.
Mm-hmm.
With regard to interest that's outstanding through 2033 for the general fund, that totals just over $16,000. So what the information I do not have is what would be, if any, the cost associated with calling that debt or the portion of that debt.
Do you happen to know offhand what we're currently seeing as a return on our reserve funds that are invested?
So right now, I think if I am understanding your question, currently we have these funds with the Massachusetts Depository Trust, and we're earning last month we were earning 3.85%, and that does fluctuate.
Yeah. So it's costing us more to borrow than we're earning on the money.
Yes.
So it could be feasible economically to just pay off this debt that's running up at 5.
To pay off the general fund portion of it and have yes, sir.
Okay, that's what I'm getting at. If
Yes.
maybe we have to hold off on that until we see the additional information on potential cost if we prepay. Right?
It's
Yes.
it's a good path to follow, though. Thank you, Delegate Friesel. I think, those are good ways to offset some of the increases in the budgets that we have by utilizing reserves.
If I may, I mean, there was another part you showed us on Fringe, and it was called Early Retirement Incentive and Hospital Retirement. What's hospital retirement?
So the county had managed a hospital internally, and so we still have retirees that were associated with the county hospital.
Really? Right now?
Yes.
Wow. Wow.
I think they closed it in like 1997 or 6.
That was the Pocasset facility.
The Pocasset facility. That's 20 years and more.
Yeah, it's
Wow.
amazing. And then another one you show here is a reserve fund for unforeseen budget transfers, 100 grand. So do we normally have money in this budget we can move for unforeseen items without, it would not have to come back to the assembly. It would be just, I would think, available in the same budget category, and it could be spent. Am I reading that right?
Through the chairman, yeah, we would be required to bring or bring an ordinance for budget transfer to the regional commissioners and the assembly of delegates, because we must record our expenses in the proper categories.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Thank you. And I'll just say, I know I'm going to depart in a couple of minutes, Mr. Chair, but there was also a memo, very helpful memo, which outlined how we will get to the $200,000 necessary for the indirect rate study proposal by decreasing various line items that were shown in the memo on the group health insurance. So that, to me, at least, if you take that up today, I'd be in favor of that.
I don't think anybody in the finance committee has seen the details of that yet, so we might have to put that off till Monday. But
Okay.
I'm at the mercy of my finance committee. But
Okay.
that was one of my questions, so thank you for asking it, because I know
Yeah.
we can do it, and then leave it up to the assembly, the full assembly, to decide whether they want to spend the 200 grand or not. I mean, all we do is recommend, once
Right.
we have the information.
Yeah, we do have it in today's memos from the director.
Yeah, I did not get a chance to see that, sorry.
Yeah, I know. It's a lot of data. It came in around 3:30. I know.
Yeah. So we might have to put that off till Monday.
Okay.
That will give us, the finance board, the finance committee, a chance to digest that.
Sure.
Thank you.
Sure.
And,
Okay, thank you.
and let us know when you're actually leaving, and I
Yeah.
will bring Delegate Fuller on board.
Right.
He's right here for that. Okay. So now, next, I think we can go back to the Commissioner's Office and Administration. Administrator Dutton, you're on. You are muted.
That might be preferable. You have in front of you a budget that looks dramatically different than, at least if you look at the graph, than our budget for 2026. And I can explain some of those. There really aren't radical differences. I will say that the administration budget is the budget where it's sort of like the island of misfit toys. So all of the oddball things that happen in the county kind of get to the administration budget. And in some cases, for instance, I had mentioned the compost facility and shared regional housing. Those are two pretty big chunks of the increase in contractuals. And once those are up and running, I would fully expect that the administration budget would pass those off to the appropriate department. But for the time being, and for to see their growth and sustainability, they're sort of packed into the administration budget. So just to sort of go through a couple of those things, let me get to it. So they're really in terms of staffing and so forth, not a huge, no difference. We do have the regional housing budgeted in here. Again, regional housing is offset by the revenue that we charge the towns, plus de minimis, or plus our de minimis 15%. And that's budgeted at 157,250. We have budgeted for the compost facility, the site, to secure the site and cover legal expenses that we will have negotiating an land use agreement with Joint Base Cape Cod. And we budgeted that at 75,000. I fully expect that will be substantially less than what we budget, but as anytime you budget legal expense and sort of the unknown engineering expense, you want to make sure that you're being somewhat conservative about it. And finally, we contract with we contract with a safety consultant And if you, I know this committee looked at workers' comp increases. So we've decided to consolidate the work that the safety consultant does into the administration budget, so that administration can more easily direct the work that safety consultant does, and really tackle some of those issues that we've had with injuries. Try to prevent issues we've had with injury. So that is really the bulk of the increase in the contractual line, those three items. And otherwise, just to hit some of the high spots, you see, sorry. You just see some increases in utilities. You see some increases across the board in areas which you would fully expect to see increases, and otherwise we are looking. Oh, I just lost my place. Sorry. Otherwise, we are looking at a fairly consistent budget without a whole lot of bells and whistles. But while I find my place, I'm happy to answer questions.
Delegate Frizzell, you can give it right up.
Yeah, I'm going to be leaving in a second. I just had one question. In the past, this regional, this new waste composting position was grant funded. Is that not going to happen in FY27?
We are budgeting for it as I mentioned, in environmental and cooperative extension. We are budgeting for that. The money here is to fund the expenses associated with securing the property within Joint Base Cape Cod. So it sort of covers phase 2 of sort of a three-phase project. This does not cover salary. This covers merely the legal expense, the engineering expense, to make sure that we can secure the land and get to successful negotiation with the 4 Upper Cape towns and Joint Base Cape Cod.
So is that grant position and extension still grant funded?
The short answer is not this second. We fully expect to have some private grant funding, a substantial amount of private grant funding, and we also expect to have a significant amount of grant funding through the Federal Department of Agriculture and also the state for the actual construction of the waste facility. But that's probably out about 12 months.
Okay. All right, I'm leaving, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Thank you for your service. Now, Mr. Fuller, you're on board, and I'm looking for further discussion from the board on the commissioners and office administration. The only question I have is I think I know the answer, but the biggest number is you've gone down a little bit in salary, but you've gone up 570% in consultants, and I know that is the grant funding mechanism that you're doing. But is there anything else that I'm missing?
I think percentage-wise, money-wise, it's tiny, but percentage-wise, supplies and materials, that just reflects the increasing costs of stuff, so to speak. But really, not a huge increase. We do have an increase in fringe benefits that is reflective of people not currently on our health insurance coming onto our health insurance. Does not reflect additional staff or anything like that.
It's the vagaries of what people choose year to year to join or not join.
Exactly.
Okay. Questions from the board, please. Seeing none, I would entertain a motion.
I'll move we forward this to the assembly for approval.
For approval, thank you. And is there a second?
Second.
By Delegate Fuller. Further discussion from the board. Seeing none, roll call, please.
All right, that's Delegate Fuller for Deputy Speaker Frizzell.
Yes.
Yes.
Delegate Gallagher,
Yes.
Vice Chair Killian,
Yes.
Delegate O'Malley,
Yes.
Chair Omen.
Yes,
That's 5 still.
thank you so much. I'm gonna take an executive decision to put Children's Cove on for Monday. The time draws nigh tonight, and it's something that will require some additional mulling over by the board, I'm sure. So the last item on the other will be the Assembly of Delegates. I'm going to give that to the clerk.
Sure, Mr. Chair.
And we also do have the speaker on board too.
Oh,
She
Well,
was on board.
yeah.
Yeah, she's here. Yeah. Okay.
Well,
Clerk Fletcher.
considering that the budget for the assembly, at least as proposed, tends to be the speaker working with the finance chair and myself. Luckily, we have a pretty simple budget. Part of that is because although the assembly is important, we don't have as much in the way of staff. So the only change from last year's proposed budget to this year is that we're working to ensure that we have enough money for the assistant clerk's salary to be at 19 and a half hours rather than 15 hours, if that's what's chosen. There are other people in the county who work 19 and a half. 20, I believe, is the threshold when benefits are mandated. And so I do believe we did that in last year's budget, although we may not have taken advantage of that. We worked to do that in this year's budget. All of the rest is basically the same, up to and including the 35,000 that we put aside in the legal budget for the charter review. Part of that is because we do run July 1st to June 30th of the following fiscal year, and no one really knows yet whether the ballot charter study question on the ballot will pass or not. There's certainly a possibility that if it does not pass, that the assembly would want to get back to work on charter review. And if it does pass, in the underlying statute, it's 35,000 with or without appropriation, by the way, up to I think 1% of the county budget. But certainly any elected or any outside charter review commission would need at least the 35,000 that we budgeted. So we left that in there. But I mean, our budget's the same year to year. It's hard to tell what's going to happen. We provide, as you guys all know, the assembly has $1,000 a year stipend, and at least currently, some members take health insurance or dental or life insurance, and the $1,000 hasn't gone up since the assembly came into existence. Like the board's salary has not gone up from the 14 to 15,000 since it was in existence, and so that expense plus the necessary expenses to do the legislative work of the assembly and the charter, whether that's publishing notices in the newspaper or providing for necessary expenses for delegates and training, that's all on our budget. If any of you have any questions, I can attempt to answer them, but our budget's not that complex.
Delegate O'Malley, please.
Thank you. I'm just wondering, Mr. Fletcher, this year, all of the delegates were outfitted with new uniform computers, and I wonder, I don't understand. I'm not clear at all how our IT support, whether we are charged for that, where that fits in on our budget. But what is the impact of that? Do we anticipate that will reduce the need for IT support for all of us delegates?
That's interesting, right? Maybe that may be something that we can understand through an indirect cost or rate study. Certainly, we could talk to IT about how much time they spend dealing with delegate tech issues. One of the things about that money in the budget is that we understood that once we got the initial equipment, that we'd be on a life cycle to replace it. So eventually, you'll be dealing with phased replacement. Anecdotally, right before this meeting, I was helping to get someone from the finance committee online. And because they had a county laptop and we were both looking at the same thing, I was able to help them get online without involving IT, right? So there is some already, anecdotally, some efficiency from the fact, and I know some people on the call know this, that IT can remote into county equipment and help you. They can understand what you're seeing, see what you're seeing, and certainly the frustration level goes down, but also the staff time goes down for
Yeah.
having to help you or even being able to help you perform the role that the charter intends. So we'd have to work a little bit with IT if we can to quantify how much time IT is spending compared to what they used to spend, given the
Right.
change in equipment. But
Yeah. Thank you.
Further discussion from the board.
oh, this is what everybody else feels like who presents budgets to you. Anxiously waiting. Is there a question that I can't answer? Is there something that I don't know? There's plenty I don't know, but
Yeah.
does anybody have any questions about our budget?
I seeing none. Now you can switch roles.
Oh,
Wait a
there's
minute.
another.
Now I see Delegate O'Malley has a question. Or has a comment,
Yep.
one or the other.
Oh, he's also muted.
You're muted.
Muted. Got it. See, it's new equipment. I'll move that we vote to approve this and forward it to the assembly.
Thank
I'll
you. And I
second.
need a second. A second by
Second.
Delegate Killian. Further discussion. Delegate O'Malley, you still have a hand raised. Is that
It says it's going to take it down automatically. There we
okay?
go.
There it goes. Okay. No, if there's no further discussion, Clerk Fletcher, a roll call, please.
Well, one of the things you pay for is someone at your meetings to do roll calls, and so let me do that. That is Delegate Fuller for Deputy Speaker Frizel,
Yes.
Delegate Gallagher,
Yes.
Vice Chair Killian,
Yes.
Delegate O'Malley,
Yes.
and Chair Omen.
Yes. Now, I'm going to make sure that we know that we'll take up those other items in the meeting on Monday. But this has gone, it was very productive. I enjoy everyone's valuable time from the administration and beyond what we've learned to do. So Delegate Fletcher, Delegate Fletcher, not yet.
Well, don't do that. Never, ever. I learned my
Yeah.
lessons. But the point I want to make before we close is one more last joke about what you pay for. So we've got a full slate next week. We do have a Government Affairs and Rules Committee meeting at 4 o'clock, which many of you are a part of. And also at 4:30, we've got a Finance Committee meeting, and we're getting to the point where we're running out of time. Speaking of Assembly rules, our rules state that the Finance Committee has to deliver a report to the Assembly by the second meeting in April, and that is next Wednesday. And so we're going to attempt to get this done on Monday. If we
Okay.
can't get it done on Monday, maybe we'll have some time Wednesday afternoon before the Assembly meeting to
Let's get it done Monday now. Let's
formalize
be
it.
optimistic.
Yeah, and we do. I'm I'm happy to say that given that we have an assistant clerk and some other technological things, for once since we've been doing these reports, we're actually current. You know, we have the report from Monday's Finance Committee meeting. We'll have the report from this one by Monday, and it should make it much easier to compile this by Wednesday. But we are on a bit of a time crunch, so thank you for bearing with us as we're doing these things, and we'll have to reconvene on Monday. Yes, Delegate O'Malley.
Delegate O'Malley, please.
When did you indicate government affairs is going to be meeting?
Four on Monday, and then 4:30 is finance. But
4:30 finance.
Government affairs includes Chair Omen, Delegate Killian, yourself. If Delegate Green is not available, Delegate Gallagher, right? So it's a lot of the same cast of characters that'll be here at
All right.
4:30.
All right. Thank you.
I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Delegate Killian, second. Yep. Okay.
All right. One last
roll
time
call,
for tonight.
please.
It would be Delegate Fuller for Deputy Speaker Frizel,
Yes.
and Delegate Gallagher,
Yes.
Vice Chair Killian,
Yes.
Delegate O'Malley,
Yes.
and you, Mr. Chair.
Yes.
That's 5 for adjournment.
Okay. Thank you all for your valuable
Thank
time. I
you.
really appreciate it. I think we got a lot done.
Right.
And
Thank you.
it's,
Right.